More controversy this morning for New York Governor Andrew Cuomo. Well, a sixth woman has reportedly, she's a current staffer, told the Albany Times-Union that Cuomo reached under her blouse and groped her last year while they were alone in a room inside the executive mansion. Cuomo has denied these allegations. As the Wall Street Journal is reporting, his administration questioned former CDC Director Robert Redfield about COVID-19 nursing home death data last June. Joining me right now is New York Congressman and member of the House Financial Services Committee and House Foreign Affairs Committee, Lee Zeldin. Congressman, it's great to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us. I want to talk about what's going on with Governor Cuomo, with this sixth woman alleging sexual harassment. But first, let's talk about the COVID nursing home scandal. The Journal is reporting that the governor's office questioned Robert Redfield about the number of nursing home deaths. What does that inform us? Tell me about that issue. This is the issue that the governor hired a lawyer for, not the sexual harassment.
Well, this is a new development that we need to get additional information on to be able to share a full perspective and have a full understanding. But what we know already of the timeline with the directive, with the cover-up, with the bullying for those in the state legislature and others who wanted to shed more light on it, which, by the way, resulted, as you know, in a Department of Justice FBI investigation that's taking place. I think that there's going to be more facts to fill in the dots. We already know that it's become a loss of life scenario, that thousands of families of dead New York seniors have been very outraged about. When there's a discussion now about impeachment of Governor Cuomo or resignation of Governor Cuomo or him not running for re-election, just solely on what happened with the nursing home directive and that cover-up, that's enough to warrant him stepping out of office.
Well, look, the governor has been very clear. He says, I'm not leaving. I am not going to resign. The people of New York elected me, not politicians. What do you say to his pushback on all of this?
If he is wondering why these allegations keep coming out and that's all coming out at once, he needs to look in the mirror and blame himself. This latest allegation is a result of one of his female aides listening in real time to the governor saying that he never touched anyone inappropriately. So the female aide apparently became emotional. A female supervisor went and spoke to that female aide about what was going on, and that is what resulted in what you and I are talking about right now as this sixth allegation. The governor needs to blame himself for the situation he's at. Now, when you look at the members of the New York State Assembly and New York State Senate, the Democrats, the numbers are increasing so much, you really are beginning to wonder if this is just past the point of no return, where if the governor doesn't resign, that his own party in the state legislature is going to remove him from office.
So, Congressman, what do you want to do about it? I mean, recently you announced you are exploring a 2022 run for governor, right? Where do things stand right now?
I've been making calls over the course of the last week or so all throughout the state. In order for us to win as Republicans, where there is a voter registration disadvantage in New York, we need to make sure that everyone is all in, whether you're part of the Republican Party, the Conservative Party, elected officials. So that's what I am doing a check on right now. And I'll tell you, not only are my finding that people are all in, they are passionate and emotional about it. They are talking like this is a last stand, like they're hitting their breaking point, and that if we don't do this and if we don't win, they're leaving. And I'll tell you what, I'm getting motivated by having these conversations with folks who seem to be all ready to do what needs to get done to win next November.
All right, so it sounds like you're going to do it.
I haven't made a decision yet. I'm going to keep making these calls, because when I say that everyone needs to be all in, we need everyone to be all in, not just the first week of phone calls.
I gotcha. All right, let's talk about economics here. New York had a huge hole in its budget. The $1.9 trillion stimulus package, I guess, changes all that. Governor Cuomo is now putting a tax increase on the table for one of the reasons you just mentioned. People are fleeing New York in droves. They're going to places like Florida. They're going to Texas. So this $1.9 trillion stimulus plan includes $350 billion for the states. It wipes out the debt for New York, wipes out the debt for San Francisco. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi obviously in charge, wiping out the debt of their constituents. constituents. Your take on where we are economically speaking, are we going to see the potential for bankruptcy in New York, or are we just going to see a steady decline given the fact that now this stimulus is going to pass and become law when it reaches the president's desk, and it pretty much bailed them out?
Yeah, exactly. And this is taxpayer monopoly funny money. Basically, New York and a lot of local municipalities are hitting the lottery this week. I was talking to one of my House Democratic colleagues, and I say, if you guys don't have a problem passing bills like this, why don't you just pass $1.9 trillion every week? And he's looking at me as if maybe I wasn't being sarcastic. And it's pretty wild, just the way they look at taxpayers as pawns. As far as the state goes, it's crazy to me that while they're hitting the lottery, that you would be talking about a tax increase. And while we were talking earlier about a nursing home directive and cover-up, and we're talking about the sexual harassment allegations, when you talk about a tax on freedoms, on our wallets, on our safety, people are fleeing. And what's different than the past is that when they're leaving, they're saying they're not coming back. They're turning their back on New York permanently. So that on top of it all, as you're getting all this money from Washington, that you would have the nerve to talk about increasing taxes even more is just so out of touch with the reality. To answer your question, what I don't think is going to happen imminently with New York is bankruptcy, especially with bailouts like this. It's going to continue a steady decline of New York's economy and population, and we're going to lose out on many fronts, and we'll see it when the census data comes out and New York loses 1 to 2 congressional seats.